Hey everyone! Today I want to briefly introduce a useful method to you. This will also be one of your assignments for this course, Introduction to Cultural Studies and Psychoanalysis. So this method is called praising concept. Next slide. Now what does it mean to praise a concept? Next slide. Usually, we think of a concept, we don't praise it. Praising a concept means we treat it as like an unfamiliar object. We don't just use it as if we already understand its meaning, but we see that it has its materiality, it has its historicity, it also helps us to see the connection between experience and language. Praising is a metaphor. It means observing it carefully and seeing how it functions. More importantly, we place this object in different languages to see how its meanings and functions change. This is the method helps me to do my PhD. When I was doing my PhD, I want to study the question of subjectivity because it was a hot topic at that time, 20 years ago. Next slide. Issues such as 台湾主体性、女性的主体性、尊重弱势的主体性 were always debated. Everyone was fascinated by it, but nobody by these questions, but nobody really knew what exactly 主体性 meant. It was a concept without a clear definition. So when I started my PhD, I just want to study subjectivity. There were so many theories from philosophy, literary theory, critical theory, psychoanalysis, and feminism. I want to read all the theories. I was almost going mad. At that time, I was introduced to this method. I was encouraged by the teachers to pay attention to the concept itself and to think in Chinese and English. Then I realized something strange. Next slide. In Chinese, 主体性 means the quality of being the master or being a ruler or being independent and being autonomous. Next slide. However, in English, the word subject implies a kind of passivity. If we check the dictionary, we will find that the meaning of the subject has nothing to do with being a ruler. In fact, when I start learning psychoanalysis carefully, I realized that in psychoanalysis, subjectivity means various forms of dependency on the other. My subjectivity means the peculiar way in which I rely on other people or other things. Now, what is happening? Next slide. There is a translated concept 主体性 and there is a foreign concept subjectivity. When subjectivity is translated into 主体性, some new meanings, including the opposite meanings, are created and injected into it. Eventually, you will see when we want to translate 主体性 back into English, we can no longer use subjectivity to translate it. I found it very fascinating. Then I spent 10 years to study the relationship between subjectivity, 主体性, and democracy in Taiwan. I pay special attention to the function of this unintelligible gap in meaning. Next slide. So, praising the concept helped connect my theoretical curiosity to my experience. My teachers rescued me from becoming totally overwhelmed by Western theory and offer me the freedom to think and to theorize something that is very precious to me, to my friends, to my people, and to Taiwan. Next slide. So this method is based on the idea that culture, concept, and translation are deeply interconnected. We understand culture through concept and their translations. We understand concepts through translation and our culture. This will be your assignment. You will have to choose a concept and press it. But don't worry, I will teach you how to do it step by step. Let me first give you an example from my Indian student. One of them chose the concept of care. She asked how to translate care into her mother tongue, Hindi and Urdu. So let me read out some paragraphs from her assignment. Next slide. She wrote, before we observe, scrutinize, and choose a translation for care in my mother tongue, I wish to emphasize that translation is a precarious and measured task. Despite my best effort, I know that some nuance will be lost in translation. Nonetheless, I wish to praise care through two languages, Hindi and Urdu. This is a very beautiful way of describing translation, isn't it? Translation is a precarious and measured task. And in order to choose a translation, we need to observe the phenomena very carefully. Then she checked English dictionary. Next slide. Care, the process of protecting someone or something and providing what the person or thing needed. Then she go to Hindi. She found 4 terms: dekbhal, dekrekh, chinta, tyang. And she found 4 terms from Urdu: hifazat, parvar, fikr, kyal. So from this, how she moved, like how she analyzed, she wrote, next slide. From the words mentioned above, it is evident that there is no literal translation for care. However, there are several words and phrases that express different textures of care. The word or phrase someone will use depends on the nuance of the situation. For instance, when attempting to tell someone, I care about you, the closest translation one can pick will be, I worry about you. So through translation, she found that care in her culture is very closely associated with anxiety and worry. This association is not so strong in English, but actually in German, the word care, Sorge, also has a very strong implication of anxiety and worry. This is what German philosopher Martin Heidegger worked on. So she is a philosopher. So eventually she couldn't decide on the term to translate care, but she said, next slide, while this vocabulary care cannot contain, it opens up several possibilities for us to imagine care. So through her assignment, can you see how culture, concept, and translation are interconnected? When you are doing your assignment, you can try to do the following step. Next slide. First, find a concept that concerns you, worries you. Second, describe in what ways it concerns you. Try to formulate your problems regarding this concept. Third, describe the social phenomena related to this concept. Try to include historical, political, cultural observations in your analysis. Fourth, translate this concept into different language. Fifth, translate it back to the original language. Sixth, what do you find in this process of translation? What is your observation? And what new problems emerge in this process? Is it all? This is not all. If we really want to do very good research, we need to work harder and need to learn more. So in this course, we will read together Sigmund Freud's essay on the uncanny. He will show us his method. How did he, step by step, find the essence of this phenomena of uncanny? He also presents this concept in a very interesting way. So we will learn from him, Freud. We will read Freud methodologically and learn from him how to deepen our investigation. Thank you for your attention.